Most people assume patience is a virtue. The quieter you wait, the wiser you seem. But sometimes patience becomes invisibility, and waiting quietly means you are slowly fading into someone else's schedule, someone else's priorities. This is the story of a man who valued patience, calm, and observation, and only later realized how much he had given himself away. He had always moved through life methodically. Every morning had a rhythm, the kettle whistled, the coffee smelled like intention, the sun's first light touched the apartment just so. The city outside woke gradually, and he stepped into it with the careful cadence of someone who knew himself, at least superficially. Predictability gave him comfort. He liked knowing the plan, the sequence, the outline of each day. Work followed the same pattern. Schedules, reports, logistics, his mind could untangle problems before they even appeared. Colleagues trusted him implicitly, and he rarely had to demand acknowledgement. Stability was its own reward. He didn't notice, though, that in giving structure to everything else, he was losing hold of himself. Evenings were quieter than he realized. He would scroll through messages, thinking nothing of them. He watched friends live their lives in bursts, spontaneous dinners, last-minute trips, while he stayed anchored to calm and routine. At first, he told himself he preferred this. That quiet consistency was better than chaos. Meeting her changed nothing at first. She was steady, intelligent, and observant. Their connection grew slowly, a conversation here, a shared coffee there. No fireworks. No immediate obsession. He valued her independence, the way she existed without needing constant reassurance. Time around her was measured differently, softer. It felt like possibility, not pressure. As weeks turned to months, patterns emerged. Delayed replies. Plans quietly postponed. Moments of absence. He noted them, yet rationalized each one. She had work, family, obligations. Everyone had complexities. He told himself he was being understanding, patient, fair. But slowly, subtle erosion occurred. He began measuring his presence in fractions, keeping small parts of himself in reserve, unsure when they would be safe to use. He started observing himself more intentionally. Not to critique, but to understand. How often did his stomach tighten when his phone vibrated? How did anticipation cloud enjoyment? How many choices were guided not by desire but by fear of inconvenience? Awareness brought clarity, but clarity brought discomfort. His friends noticed changes first. "Are you happy?" they asked gently. "You seem distant." He laughed it off. He was fine. He had learned to wear composure like armor. But at night, the quiet revealed truths he hadn't faced in the daylight. Anxiety nested under routine, and hope quietly demanded more than he was giving. He turned inward deliberately. Paid attention to his body. Which moments brought ease? Which brought tension? He noticed relief when expectations dissolved, when focus returned to himself. He noticed how often peace arrived only when nothing was anticipated. He expanded his life intentionally. Long walks through unfamiliar neighborhoods. Photography, capturing small details others ignored. Cooking meals slowly, without distraction. Running at dawn, when the city was quiet and anonymous. These routines anchored him. They reminded him of agency. Seasons shifted. Autumn deepened reflection. Winter sharpened solitude. Cold mornings clarified thought. Silence became restorative rather than lonely. He revisited past relationships in his writing. Not with blame, but curiosity. Patterns emerged. Not failures, lessons. He began to see how often he had confused endurance with commitment. Anxiety softened. Uncertainty became information rather than threat. He trusted observation over reassurance. He stopped asking himself how to fix things and began asking whether they needed fixing at all. One evening, after another casually cancelled plan, something settled inside him. Not anger. Not sadness. Calm understanding. Imagining life alone felt lighter than imagining prolonged uncertainty. He didn't act immediately. Awareness didn't demand urgency. But something shifted. Attention returned inward. Boundaries clarified, not rigid, but intentional. Morning routines regained meaning. Work regained focus. Friendships deepened through honesty. Confidence returned quietly, without announcement. He began to notice joy in small moments again. Sunlight through windows. Music while cooking. Unplanned laughter. Presence replaced anticipation. He began noticing moments that had previously gone unnoticed. The way the wind moved through the streets at dusk. The soft creak of his apartment floorboards as he walked from room to room. The faint smell of rain on concrete. Each sensory fragment reminded him that life was still unfolding around him, even if he had been standing still. He reflected on choices he hadn't made, invitations he hadn't accepted, conversations he had deferred. There was a pang, not of regret, but of awareness. Time is finite, and stillness, while comfortable, carries its own cost. He realized he had been waiting for clarity, for a sign, for external validation, rather than creating it himself. That night, he sat in his dimly lit apartment, a journal open before him. Words flowed slowly at first, hesitant, but then with increasing confidence. He traced patterns in his own behavior, revisited the small pains, the overlooked joys, the subtle tensions. He didn't write to solve or to judge, he wrote to witness, to anchor, to reclaim. In that act, the first sparks of intention emerged. Patience became conscious. Observation became reflection. Awareness became a guide rather than a shield. He understood that the life he wanted, engaged, intentional, grounded, would not arrive by waiting quietly. It would require small, deliberate steps. This quiet reckoning extended over days, then weeks. Each walk, each meal, each conversation, each note taken became a thread weaving him back to himself. He felt the weight of moments he had surrendered, and began gently retrieving them. And in this process, the first true sense of presence returned, soft, cautious, but undeniably his. He began small experiments to reclaim presence. Long walks through neighborhoods he hadn't explored. Taking photographs of things normally ignored, a crack in the pavement, a fleeting expression on a passerby's face. Cooking meals with attention, noticing textures and aromas. Writing in journals, unsent, capturing thoughts he couldn't voice aloud. Each act was a subtle rebellion against invisibility, a reclaiming of self. Yet cycles repeated. Periods of closeness followed by distance. Apologies came, explanations followed, the pattern continued. Each time he adapted, holding back more, measuring interactions more carefully. It was protective, he reasoned, a shield to preserve his calm. But preservation required sacrifice, and little by little, he was leaving pieces of himself in the pauses between words. Seasons shifted. Autumn brought reflective walks, leaves underfoot, the crisp air sharpening thought. Winter clarified solitude. He observed these rhythms as if cataloging data, yet emotion intruded quietly, longing, anticipation, mild disappointment. He revisited past relationships in memory and in writing. Patterns emerged, not mistakes, not errors, but lessons. Patience can be generous, but passivity can be costly. Emotional endurance has limits. Observing without acting can teach wisdom, but it can also quietly teach regret. One evening, after another postponed plan, a quiet certainty settled. He recognized that calm wasn't fulfillment. Predictability wasn't engagement. And yet he hadn't acted, hadn't set boundaries until the weight of stillness became too noticeable to ignore. Morning routines regained significance. Coffee smelled of intention. The city outside seemed slower, warmer, more tangible. He started new rituals: deliberate walking, attentive cooking, focused journaling. Each choice carried ownership. He was rebuilding, slowly, deliberately, with awareness now as the guide rather than routine alone. Friendships deepened. Conversations were richer, more reciprocal. He tested honesty, authenticity, and found that sharing truth brought ease rather than vulnerability. Laughter returned, not pre-planned or measured, but spontaneous. Joy was no longer rationed. Reflections expanded beyond romance. He examined work, friendships, family, and discovered the power of intention. Compromise became conscious, not habitual. Choices became statements: my life is mine. My attention is mine. My presence is mine. Nostalgia appeared occasionally, memories of her, of almost moments, of paths almost taken. He observed them with clarity, not longing. Lessons were clear: awareness matters, patience is a gift, but inaction can steal time quietly. Confidence returned, subtle and grounded. Sleep deepened. Mornings were no longer rituals of scanning for validation. The tension that once gripped his shoulders eased. Calm returned, not as absence, but as presence. By the end of the year, he reflected quietly: life hadn't exploded or shifted dramatically. But he had. Every ordinary moment now carried new weight, every interaction held clarity, every choice was intentional. He had learned to live, fully and deliberately, without waiting for permission or validation. He didn't measure life by noise, reaction, or acknowledgement. He measured it by presence, by attention, by the quiet moments that mattered. And in that presence, he found a strength that had always existed, simply waiting to be recognized.